Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome back to the Haqq Project. We're so excited to be back for episode 6 of the Haqq Project. And in today's episode, we will be talking about Muharram, and we will be talking about Imam Hussain alayhi salam and some lessons from him and understanding who he is and what Muharram is and why we commemorate these days together. Inshallah, before we begin, we will be starting off with our dua.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli.
In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. My Lord, expand for me my chest, and ease for me my task, and untie the knot from my tongue, that they may understand my speech. Sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim.
So the month of Muharram is labeled as one of the most sacred months. We use this time to strengthen our iman, and we use this time to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so coming into this podcast, we really have the intention to share anything that can help our friends and family that are watching this podcast to be able to hone into this month more, and just similarly to how we really put our all into Ramadan to be our best version of ourselves. We truly believe that Muharram is a time to do that as well.
As we know, Muharram is the first month of the year, and I think this is so important because how we start our year is very different from how a lot of cultures and a lot of religions start their year. We start our year with mourning and with remembrance and understanding, and I think that's what makes Muharram so beautiful and so important.
And when I was watching that lecture on the etiquettes of Muharram by Marhum Sayyid Jafri, he actually said that, giving up these levels of comfort are actually something that we should be doing and taking proactively as a step in Muharram to become that better version of ourselves as well, because you're acknowledging that the events of Muharram were very real and are ones that we should be mourning over, and they're not ordinary days. They're not days that, we should be treating like any other. So even carrying that sadness throughout the day is important because you're remembering what happened. That's why we wear black. A lot of people grow up in households where they don't regularly watch TV or seek that entertainment. So remembering that is something we'd like to remind you all as well.
I completely agree. And we're just in a complete state of remembrance and I guess gratefulness for what Imam Hussain did, but we're just so humbled by the type of things he put himself through for us. And we just spend that month feeling that, just really feeling that, yeah?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to put it. Our duty during this month, I believe that we should really devote ourselves to remembering Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And so that includes recalling who he was as a person, his characteristics, his values, the sacrifices. An important point as well that Marhum Sayyid Jafri made during his lecture, Etiquettes of Muharram, he shared that us remembering Imam Hussain alayhi salam, it doesn't elevate his legacy the way it might elevate a public figure's legacy. So for example, Martin Luther King, if we remember him as a person, it elevates his legacy over the years because he's being remembered for what he did. But Imam Hussain alayhi salam's legacy is so significant and high that us remembering him over the years doesn't elevate his legacy because his legacy is already so high. It's actually that it helps us as Muslims and helps us as people that we remember who he was, because look, we're improving ourselves in this month, we're staying closer to Allah in this month, we become closer to Islam in this month. So that's really helping us.
I think that's a really amazing point to make because we think we might be putting Imam Hussain alayhi salam up, but we're really just helping ourselves. And I never thought of it that way, and I think it's such a beautiful way of thinking of it because of, it makes us realize that we're just here to improve ourselves, help ourselves grow, make ourselves better people. And Muharram is doing that for us. We may not realize it the way we see it for Ramadan, but it's doing so much for us, in our souls.
I agree. I think it's also important for us to discuss how we're going to prepare for these months. What's something that you're going to do?
I mean, for me, before Muharram, a very important point is to study the people that went through Ashura themselves, like the family of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and remembering their stories and their lives and their characteristics and the type of people they were, and reading some stories about them and what they did in their daily lives. This really brings some connection to the people. So when we're there listening to their masayib at mosque, we can feel it. We can really feel it. We should have an intention and speak to our 12th Imam and, have that intention to get closer to his family. Because when he comes and we don't know anything about him, it's gonna be kind of heartbreaking, because he is our 12th Imam, and we are so, we're so passionate about meeting him and getting to know him, but we gotta get to know his family and what they went through and the whole story and why he is so sad during this time as well. We're giving our hearts to him and giving our condolences to him for what had happened. And we should also put in that effort to know who we're giving condolences to.
I think another way that we can prepare for this month is asking ourselves how we can give back to Imam Hussain for everything that he's done for us, because the reason Islam is the way it is today, and especially us as Shias, the religion that we follow today, is there because of his sacrifices. And our thanks to him should be to become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to improve ourselves as people. So thinking about what can we give back, and I think one of those things could be to be that leader in our household, to bring our family and even that influence for our friends, to bring them to the masayib of Imam Hussain alayhi salam and his family, and to come to mosque on the 10 nights, but even beyond that, right? And I understand busy schedules because I'm a student, I'm working, right? There's many things. You understand busy schedules. Our parents do, because everybody's busy in a different way. And it is difficult to come to mosque, but when I tell you, my experience of either coming to mosque or not coming to mosque creates this kind of better, you feel better, right?
Definitely.
You feel you have a purpose, and a purpose that is like no other, right? Because you might decide to stay home from mosque because you have a purpose, like waking up for work tomorrow morning early. But when you bring your purpose to being more important for you to come to mosque on that night, your purpose in life just becomes stronger. You realize that you as a Muslim and you as someone practicing Shia Islam is even more important than your job. And I think that, it's easy to say in one way because someone might be like, yeah, well, money doesn't grow on trees, so you need to show up. But it's kind of one of those things where when you trust Allah and you trust that what you're believing in and what you're showing up for will manifest into something greater, I really do believe that happens, because you putting that energy or that time into coming late to mosque at night will present you other opportunities and will present you a gift from Allah, where he'll show up for you in ways where you didn't even realize that Allah's showing you these blessings just because of your love for Imam Hussain alayhi salam.
I love how beautifully you explained how going to mosque really has such a huge impact on us. We might not see the impact, we might not feel the impact immediately, but it's such a huge impact, and we should really be putting in that effort to go and present ourselves in this time.
Moving on to who Imam Hussain alayhi salam was.
Imam Hussain was born on 626 AD in the city of Medina. He was a person through whose veins flowed truth and justice. He grew up in a family that showed many beautiful traits, and he grew up surrounded by this. And he devoted his whole life to Islam and to the growth of the Muslims. Imam Hussain alayhi salam was the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and just over 50 years of the death of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the rulership became corrupt under the tyrant Yazid from the Umayyad family.
So what this did was it caused a lot of corruption on the land and caused a lot of oppression towards Imam Hussain alayhi salam and his family. And the consequences of Yazid's rulership was catastrophic. It was horrible. And it's something that when we look at, we ask ourselves, why did Imam Hussain alayhi salam allow himself to continue going through this and his family to continue going through this? If they could have just maybe left the battle or, agreed to be under the rulership of Yazid, but he still chose to, endure that hardship and that oppression because he refused to accept to give allegiance to Yazid. And when we learn from that, we can really understand that Imam Hussain alayhi salam did not give up his beliefs, his values, his morals, and ultimately his mission and his duty to continue to spread the message of Islam. If he were to give in to Yazid's rule, and if he had pledged allegiance to Yazid, then we wouldn't have the Islam we have today because we wouldn't know what it truly was, right? So that's where we can really see his sacrifice was so great that him and his family endured such levels of cruelty and oppression to now have the Islam we have today.
Yeah, it really shows how he was ready to stand up for the right cause. And he knew that this is a time when he had to put in everything for Islam. He was a resilient person, he was a resistant person, and he really shows us what we should be doing right now. Many people in the world are currently heavily oppressed by the systems, and there's people suffering and struggling all over the world. And I think this is really a time that Imam Hussain alayhi salam would have stood up for what's right. And it's time for us to do what we can to stand up for what's right and have that resilience and resistance that he did during his time. Because I know a lot of people, I'm really hearing this everywhere, it's saying we're like back to Karbala, we're back to Ashura, like it's all here and it's right in front of us. We have to be standing for the right things and for the right causes and doing everything we can to support the people who are suffering. Yeah.
And that reminds me of a statement, which is our silence is complicit. So we're complicit in what's going on in the world and the cruelty and the oppression and any of the abuse that's going on to anybody, whether that's on a small scale or on a bigger scale in terms of war. Our silence in that sense makes us complicit towards any injustices happening around us. And so us speaking up about those small things to the big things are all important, right? Us standing for justice and us living by justice is extremely important. An important point that I wanted to mention was that Imam Hussain alayhi salam had incredible companions who stayed by his side throughout the oppression and injustices that were happening at the time. Imam Hussain gathered his companions and he asked them if they wanted to leave, if they desired to leave and not continue to partake in the battles happening at the time.
Yes, because he knew that this was a time that was very close to their death. And he wanted to give them the opportunity or the choice to choose whether they wanted to essentially die tomorrow for this cause, or if maybe they had other things they had in the back of their mind. And he wanted to give them the opportunity because he knew that these people already gave up so much. And even though he knew that he had to stay, and even though he knew he might be left alone during this time, he was willing to give them the opportunity to continue being able to live. Maybe they were going to help in a different way, and he was okay with that.
Imam Hussain alayhi salam, his overall sacrifice has really allowed us to take advantage of having Islam as our core foundation. The fact that we have the Haqq project and, we have something to talk about that brings barakat to our lives, and something to talk about that, and when I say barakat to our lives, I mean that, we live intentionally remembering that we are attached to Islam, and we've made the Haqq project as a part of our identities because we're saying that we're living by the truth and that we want to be true to ourselves as being good Muslims and improving ourselves on a daily basis. And that is a gift. We're given a purpose in this way, and I think it's important for us to recognize that the purpose that we have today is because of Imam Hussain alayhi salam.
And I think this conversation really helped us get that start off. Like as I said before Muharram starts, I want to get that understanding of the imams and what they did for us. And this kind of started us off and
Yeah.
gave us that mental like check, like that Muharram is coming, you know, and
Mhm.
now we're ready.
Yeah.
Hopefully
I
this
think
helps us go through Muharram in a more
yeah.
intentional manner.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to put it.
We really appreciate you guys for joining us today. We hope to see you guys, inshallah, very soon with our next episode on the Haqq Project.
Thank you for tuning in.
Khudafis.
Hafiz.